So let's begin. Hello to everyone who's joined us today. That is 30th of July, has been designated as the World Day Against Trafficking in Persons. And we are here to discuss human trafficking, gender, and law, crossroads to explore. And during the discussion, we will look at intersections of sex, gender, sexuality with trafficking, followed by the legal complexities, and of course, the impact of COVID-19. I'll quickly introduce the panelists. We have Dr. Neha Nimble, who is an independent researcher and a former research officer for a project titled National Research Study on Human Trafficking in India with TISS. We have Mr. Rishikant Ji, who is an anti-trafficking activist with Shakti Vahini. And we have Dr. Bharti Sharma, who's the honorary secretary at Shakti Shalini. So welcome you all. Thank you so much for speaking with us today. Right. So I am going to directly jump to the questions, and I will begin with you, Bharti ma'am. Ma'am, looking at Shakti Shalini's work, Shakti Shalini has been working with the survivors of gender and sexual violence for over decades now. Could you talk about, and also of course, let's not forget to mention that we also support and rehabilitate the survivors. We have a shelter home, and where we have, of course, the survivors of trafficking as well. So could you please talk about your understanding of trafficking and also the connect between gender violence and trafficking?
Yeah, in a very simple language and for people to understand largely,
Right.
trafficking is, तो हिंदी में कहते हैं तस्करी. Trafficking is where a person is making use of, taking advantage of another person's most vulnerable situation. People who are very marginalized and who are very, very vulnerable situations, they are the people who fall prey to a person who is known as trafficker.
Right.
And the situation is where, especially it comes from those areas where there is large scale of poverty. The person who is being trafficked is a person who is in dire need of some work, something ahead where this person is already placed. And so this is all, it might appear like a consent, but it is all deceit and fraud that is taking place in relation to the person who is being trafficked.
Right.
So this is the most heinous kind of offense, I would say, of trafficking.
Okay.
Now, yeah.
No, go on, please. Go on.
See, when I want the intersection of gender and sexual violence, trafficking is very close to that, is almost that. What happens in gender violence, what happens in sexual violence is that the person who is the victim or the survivor, the emotions, the psyche of the person, the total personhood of the person is so severely damaged and severed that this person becomes so much dependent on the person who is the accused, who is the victimizer, and in relation to trafficking, who is the trafficker.
Right.
Same thing happens in relation to the person who is being trafficked or who is a traffic survivor, that emotionally this person is so totally downgraded. The whole psychological makeup, the strength, mental strength of the person is totally devastated. And the accuser, the trafficker, tries to that this person is totally at the mercy of the trafficker. Same as we see in case of gender and sexual violence, the perpetrator is supreme. The person who is the survivor is at such a low level that we find it difficult to rise up. And there is great similarity between the survivor of trafficker and the survivor of gender and sexual violence. This is one reason why Shakti Shalini runs a shelter home for women who are survivor of violence. And this is where we are also open to have victims of trafficking because there is so much that goes, there is so much of similarity in terms of the damage that happens to the survivor. And so we are open not only to a gender sexual violence, pure gender sexual violence, but at the same time, Shakti Shalini chat room is open to all the survivors of trafficking as well. Yes, there would be a little difference in terms of handling the cases, but that is how it happens in each and in each individual case. In fact, each survivor is so very different, and so that is how it has to be handled. I think this is what I would like to place straight away here, and maybe now in all our discourses that we have with Shashikantji and between that, if we can keep trafficking in relation to gender and sexual violence also, let's draw these commonalities, let's draw these intersections very clearly so that people at large do not see trafficking as a separate entity altogether, though yes, there are differences. Thank you. Please.
Rishikantji, if you'd like to comment on that.
I would also like to say what Bharti ji has told about the whole organized crime. It is basically organized crime and crime against humanity, as Bharti ji said. And I would like to add on that it's not against crime against humanity also, but it's totally crime against women. And when I say women, maximum, if you see on record, maximum times a young girl is being trafficked from across the country. And within the, people say there are also cross-border trafficking, but 95-96% of trafficking happens within. Our own girls and daughters are being trafficked. And that is what Bharti ji said, that it is crime against humanity. We need to say that it is an organized crime. Somebody picks the girls, somebody identifies the girls in the village. Somebody picks the girls, somebody brings the girls to the villages, from the villages to the railway station. From railway station, the girl is brought to a big city. There is a chain of traffickers. We need to identify those chain of traffickers. It is now time. India last 10-15 years have done extensively lot of good work in terms of fighting organized crime. Now it is time to break the organized crime right at the village level. We need to identify those people. Who are the people who are identifying our children, young girls who are vulnerable in their families, identifying them, procuring them, deceiving them, frauding them, and bringing them and putting them in the red light areas. It is a chain of traffickers. Now India should fight that. We need to bring each and every level of traffickers and put them behind bars. We have to do that. And I know that efforts like what Bharti ji has done, years of her efforts have brought in a lot of changes in terms of also what government thinks now. Now the government has brought in advisories, especially in the times of COVID also. This is the time when we all activists have to join together and say across the government cutting level edge that aaj ye waqt aisa hai, today is the time when we all have to unite together and address the issues of vulnerability, because job losses ho rahe hain, families after families are getting vulnerable. It is now time to break those organized crime right at the village level. This is what I want to say, that it is we need to identify कौन है वो जो लड़की को ढूंढता है, कैसे पता कि bringing a girl from a Sundarban, from South 24 Pargana, from West Bengal and putting them in Pune red light area, ये इस बीच का कौन है? Who are those people? We need to identify them and put them behind bars and break the backbone of the traffickers.
Right, and it's also I think something voices. Looking at the revised anti-trafficking bill as well, they've made some. They've proposed a lot of things. For example, they've asked for mandatory reporting of crime. They've asked for creation of national database of victims, etc. So ये उसमें ही आ सकता है, उसी में ही fit in होना चाहिए आपके according जो ये organized crime जिसको हम बोल रहे हैं आप, उसका
एकदम
लोग involved है.
एकदम इसी में फिट होना चाहिए अगर केसेस आते हैं. और टोटली देखिए ये बिल जो है पूरा टोटली कंसंट्रेट कर रहा है विक्टिम के ऊपर. when we address earlier kya tha, everything was on the accused to, a victim has to prove in the court that was not trafficked. Now perception has changed. अब ये bill clear accused के तरफ जा रहा है, उसे prove करना होगा कि उसने trafficking किया है कि नहीं किया है. So कहीं ना कहीं, our laws are also being changed. Positive, toward thinking towards the victim is also put in the bill. I think this is very good time, and the bill should come fast now. We all are hoping that the bill should come fast now.
Right. I mean, it gives a lot of immunity to the victim, like you pointed out. There was another report earlier this year which talked about compensation, that the victims are eligible to this compensation as well as shelter. But looking at the numbers, the amount of victims who receive it, etc., or apply for the compensation, it's minimal. It's a disappointing number. It's, well, not there at all. It's just in hundreds. So what do you think is the reason behind this? It's lack of awareness, etc., and what needs to be done to make the victims aware that you are eligible for this and how to apply for this? क्या complications क्या हैं और उसको solve करने के लिए क्या हो सकता है? और शक्ति वहाँ नहीं, इतना आपने काम किया है, तो आप कैसे इसको आगे?
No doubt, we have been working with lot of survivors. When we do the rescue operation, we file an FIR, we become the complainant. Even we people are learning that, victim compensation 25, once the girl is rescued, 25% of victim survivor जो compensation है, वो immediately, that money should be immediately given to the girl. But, the girl doesn't know the law. They are people from the villages. Even we were not knowing. When we attended lot of meetings, understood the law, then only we also learned it. Similarly, the victims are people who are trapped by these traffickers, and that is why those young girls or the families are trapped, because they don't know the law. They don't know what is right and what is wrong. And once they are rescued, they don't even know whether an FIR has to be registered or not. They simply think that I have been rescued and I want to go back home. The family, nowadays the perception of the family has also changed. Earlier the family didn't accepted the survivor, but now the survivors are being accepted by the families. But the family don't know whether the compensation, who will give the compensation. The IOs are not knowing that it is IO who will refer the compensation request to the legal service authorities. So these are the things, when an IO is not knowing, how can we expect that a survivor of human trafficking knows this? There is a lack of awareness. We need to create more awareness on this, and that is why trainings and efforts, what Bharti ji has done, years of training she has done, conducted training, and that has been bringing a lot of fruits. I know giving compensation is a huge task. Sometimes the compensation report doesn't come on time. There is a bureaucracy which delays the matter. I think in the bill which is coming in on anti-trafficking, I think everything has been now addressed. It will be a time bound, and I hope that compensation should be right of those survivors. When the girl was trafficked or a boy was trafficked, it was the law of the land failed, and compensation as per the Supreme Court is the right for a survivor. And that is what I think we need to create more awareness. When we conduct a rescue operation, we need to inform the families, we need to inform the survivor that you are entitled for these compensations. We need to tell the IOs that it is you who will write the letter for compensation and give justice to these girls. I think a lack of awareness is there. We need to create more awareness. The more we are aware, the better result we will see.
Right. And I think it's also on organizations to kind of, yes, the process as well. If you look at the process, it's quite tedious. The paperwork, the FIRs required, क्योंकि वहाँ है कि जहाँ से traffic हुआ उसका भी FIR चाहिए, और जहाँ से rescue हुए या फिर जहाँ जिस area से rescue हुए वहाँ से भी FIR चाहिए. But in cases where they escape, they manage to run away, तो वहाँ से FIR लेना मुश्किल है. So I guess there's also a requirement to simplify the process, and it shouldn't be that tedious. Otherwise, it's really intimidating for even, to apply for compensation.
Yeah, it is sometimes stressful for us. I mean, I have rescued a girl from 2013 and still the compensation has not been given. Can you imagine this? So the compensation has to be town bound, and it should be addressed like it is the right of the victim. The police officials, the IO should know that it is they who can give in writing. It is, and once they register an FIR,
right,
the IO should immediately, the moment FIR is registered or even a general diary is registered. Suppose sometimes we assume or presume that it is trafficking case. The girl is being rescued from, suppose a girl was being taken to a red light area, and before she entered the red light area, the girl was rescued. Somewhere down the line, she was being taken, the action was happening. So compensation, even for that, I will demand for that also, that the compensation right there, the moment GD entry or a general diary entry is put in the police station, the IO must send a letter for compensation to the legal service authority, and the IO should write it in such a way that it should become a time bound.
Right. Right. And I think I'll come to Neha also for this. With the pandemic going on and everybody's in lockdown, slowly opening up, but we still are. So there's a new normal that's been defined, and even the traffickers have found their own new normal of operating. So if you could talk about that, and what are the implications? And it's extremely difficult for first responders to even reach to the victims, और जुडिशल सर्विसेज में भी अभी कुछ लैग है, तो जिनका केस चल रहा है तो उसके अंदर भी इश्यूज आ रहे होंगे. If you could just talk about that.
So basically, when it comes to new normal after lockdown and caused by pandemic, what is happening is the good that was being done, the advances that had already been made, wo ruk gaye hain. While the challenges to trafficking have increased and they are moving ahead. Traffickers are moving ahead. Trafficking, the vulnerabilities which make people, vulnerable to being trafficked, they are increasing. So what is happening is the positives have stalled for a while, or they are not as much at pace as other vulnerabilities are due to the pandemic. So when it comes to new normal, what is becoming new normal, I would like to talk about that.
Yeah.
So as COVID-19 has struck, there is lockdown. Of course, it was much required. It was definitely required. I won't contest that. So at a macro level, how that has changed things, because traffickers operate in a very macro economic model, and they are just minor, entities within that.
Yeah.
So what is happening? We were, before a pandemic, we were in a race to become 5 trillion economy, and suddenly there is this new anxiety where not only our country, the whole world is facing the threat of reduced economic growth. So what happens when we are dealing with such anxiety is, economy through factories, through companies or other economic entities, they will try to make up for the financial losses that they have made in the last 4 or 5 months.
Right.
So to do that, who will be called upon to reduce their entitlements and rights? It will be laborers. So they will be the ones who will be asked to give in longer hours. They'll be asked to provide cheaper labor. And when this happens, who is cheaper labor? Children are cheaper labor. If we try to understand how labor inequalities sustain or persist. So that is one thing which is happening. And because so many people have already lost out on their livelihoods, already lost out on their incomes, and their families have lost all their coping capacities against approach of a trafficker. What is happening is they have no bargaining power.
Right.
Laborers, they have no bargaining power now because they are left with negative incomes now.
Right.
And they have to kind of seemingly agree to work on conditions that are agreed upon by the contractor, by the agent who is trying to help them get a job, and employers or other things. Secondly, within this environment, what is happening is simultaneously to recover the economy, to make the economy go on, what we are doing is diluting the labor laws. And a lot of activists and a lot of researchers, reports, all of them are coming back and saying that this might become a new normal. These diluted labor norms for factories and this thing, they might become a new norm, and which is a very dangerous thing because it has taken us, I don't know how many decades of work by organizations like yours, like Rishkanji, and so many more organizations who have done so much of work over decades. Now it will be, it'll get a setback, and so we are only going back in our efforts to kind of reduce or prevent labor trafficking, if we talk about that. So I want to mention about women in particular. How?
Yes.
So one thing, because my focus of work until now has been women and work. So what happened when COVID-19 came was lockdown was there, and men as well as women lost out on their jobs. But we all know that it is women who had to work extra, efforts to get into that productive space that is there, accessible for them. And when I'm talking about productive space, market economy, any sort of that, I mean safe space. So
Okay.
when lockdown happened, they have been pushed out of the safe space back into their houses. So
Right.
now they have so all the efforts that they made to come out of their only reproductive space, only domestic space, into the productive space, that has been undone. And when they go back to the go back out of that safe productive space, if we consider some of it was safe, then to come back into that safe space, this is seeming very, very difficult because they don't only have the economic burden of the families. If you talk about female headed households, for example, they don't only have what do you say, economic burden, but they also have this thing called emotional work that they have to provide.
Right.
They have to ensure the well-being of the children. They have to ensure the well-being of their household. So they will be forced to accept the fraud and false promises of jobs by traffickers, even though they might know that this might be untrue. When she reaches the destination, she might have to agree to work on the conditions which she has no control over. So, and again, we have I've read a lot of reports from Rishikanji's organization where I've seen domestic violence comes out as one of the reasons why young girls and women run away from their villages, and at railway stations or bus stations they are trafficked by agents posing to be friends or well-wishers or something like that. So there are reports coming where we are saying that because there is so much, I don't want to justify that, so let's leave it. So there is this increased domestic violence within closed spaces, and women are not able to get out of that and seek help from their informal support systems, from police or whoever. So again, there is this increased chance of those women and girls wanting to just run away from that, violent
Right.
space.
Right.
And those women and girls again become more vulnerable. And that all of this is facing this normalization, because what prevents things from becoming normal, one of the things is law. So what is happening is law and performance agencies have this additional, profound work of ensuring that lockdown is in place, ensuring that things
Right.
are as they should be. So
Right.
the distraction of law enforcement agencies towards other things uh, is taking a lot away from their role in, kind of identifying, preventing traffickers from uh, approaching vulnerable populations.
Right.
So all of this is, coming out as something which is working in tandem, which it does, because it's not a separate entity. Trafficking, as ma'am said, it's not a separate crime. And another thing, because particularly coming down to children, I have to say, so one of the new normal in COVID-19 is digitization of education and closure of schools for the time
Right.
being.
Right.
And this is, I mean, the number of studies that I have read, the number of studies that I have been part of. Hello? Yeah. So all of them relate lack of education, lack of access to educational spaces as being a primary reason for children being trafficked. So
Okay.
in such conditions where girls and boys either they don't have access to digital infrastructure to access their schools, access to their classes because of financial lack of affordability,
Right.
or because of cultural restrictions on girls having access to mobile phones. लड़की लड़का से बात करेगी इसलिए भाई तेरे को हम फोन नहीं
फोन नहीं
देंगे,
देंगे।
चुपचाप बैठो, स्कूल जाके पढ़ाई होती है, घर में पढ़ाई नहीं होती है.
Hmm.
So within all this cultural and macro environment where education is something, we should be in an environment today. So in today's environment, we should be talking about enhancement of access to education, and we have reached a place where increasingly people are facing dropout from schools, and we will see that when children who have little access to education, at the same time they have to kind of take part in sharing the burden of financial uncertainties with their families, they'll have to drop out.
Right.
I mean, as it is interest nahi hoga, as it is unko access nahi hoga, or family ki itni buri halat hogi, what do you think? They'll drop out, and the families will be fine with it. They'll have to be fine with it, and they'll be required to share the financial burden, and that is where the whole concept of child labor comes in. So that is it's very unfortunate to witness this in 2020 for me. I mean, children having to lose out on their education. So all of these are some of the things at a very basic level which are becoming normal. But while I'm trying to understand what COVID-19 is doing in this environment, there are a couple of things which are good too. For the first time in my understanding, first time in my years of understanding how trafficking operates or anything, the thing that has happened good, I feel, is that migrant laborers crisis has come into a public domain. For the first time, I'm seeing regular people around me, my uncles and antais and my chachas, everybody knowing about there being migrant laborers, there being uncertainties or inequalities and just exploitation in the conditions of their labor. It has come into public consciousness, and migrant laborers themselves are kind of at least hearing about, if not availing, definitely hearing about new schemes coming up every day. So there is this slight increase in this and this identifying the problem, there is this visibilization of this problem outside of trafficking world, outside of organizations working on migrant labor. So that is one thing which is really nice, I feel, and I think that is a new good normal that has happened in trafficking time, COVID-19 times. So that's what I had to say.
Right.
Neha, can I make a point here, Neha? It's excellent that you brought out migration. I think it is also very important here to distinguish between migration and trafficking, because in late terms, sometimes people might think that so-and-so is going for work somewhere else. And then it is not a migration, but it is a trafficking. So I think it is very important at this juncture, especially in the COVID times, that we make it very clear that what is migration and what is trafficking. And it should not so happen that under the garb of migration, the trafficking takes place. This is a phenomena that has to be really taken care of very well. Second thing that we can address over here is the mental health of the survivors of trafficking. It is something perhaps not very well attended to. The mental health of the survivors is socially isolated, emotionally broken down, psychologically totally fractured. If that is the state of the survivor, how can we expect the survivor to take a stand? How can we expect the survivor of trafficking to see that she or he receives compensation or doesn't receive compensation? Even in case of, let us say, filing FIR, these things become too far off because the person is so totally broken down. So I think this is the time that we become more aware of instituting mental health services in a big way, so that the survivors can really come back to their normal life. That's what I would like to fly here.
Can I come in here?
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely.
Yeah. I would like to add on both Bharti ji and Neha ji what they have said it. In fact, what we have already started witnessing from West Bengal is 138 already cases of child marriage has already started in West Bengal. Every day police is registering an FIR and families, because in West Bengal maximum cases of trafficking do happen. West Bengal tops the case of trafficking in person. And when you see the result that in this time when we are talking about COVID, when the whole nation is fighting COVID, then the Amphan came in West Bengal and Odisha, and it has devastated in some part of West Bengal like South 24 and North 24 Parganas. And families after families वो बोल रहे हैं कि हम अपनी वाइफ को खाना खिलाएं कि अपनी बेटी को खाना खिलाएं. I mean, this is what the pressure is building up, and it is now time that we all should talk about these things. That बेटी को खाना खिलाना ये आपका कर्तव्य बनता है. It is your right. It's not about that you have to force and send that girl to for a marriage, early childhood. And वही जो early childhood marriage होगा, आप प्रेशर में मैरिज कर रहे हो, एंड कहीं ना कहीं वो ऑर्गेनाइज क्राइम के साथ इंडल्ज होगा वो आदमी. और अल्टीमेटली वी हैव ऑलरेडी विटनेस्ड lot of cases where early child marriage happened, and ultimately the husband was part of that racket and brought and sold the girls in the red light area. So it is now time that we fight it tooth and nail, the early childhood marriage. We raise these issues, and I'm very happy that Shakti Shalini is bringing this webinar and talking about these issues on the international, on the World AIDS Day against human trafficking. Because it is human trafficking is the end part of it. The beginning, we need to talk about vulnerabilities. We need to talk about child marriage. We need to talk about violence in the family. We need to talk about, the issues which are really serious in nature within the family. And if we address those issues, I think we will together fight the issue of human trafficking.
That is true. That is true. I think Mr. Shrikantji just summarizes perfectly, Bharati ma'am. So we just have another minute, so I think we'll have to kind of cut this short now. But thank you so much for this. It was a great discussion. We have to look at so many things, the bills coming up, like Shrikantji talked about, the impact of COVID, and what's the way forward. We've all looked at that. So thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. And
thank you.
All right. Okay.
So I have to say, Rupinder.
Yes.
Thanks to you. Thanks to Shakti Shalini, because I'm really pleased and very, very honored to be sharing the stage with ma'am. Such a accomplished and experienced people like ma'am and Shrikantji. I'm really, really happy.
Thank you, Neha. Thank you.
That's great. Okay. All right. Bye. Take care, everyone. Bye.